Hello, Sophie. It's just you and me doing Agony Aunties today. And our question is, I'm interested in the topic of recovery. For nearly 10 years, my life was limited by ME and CFS and chronic migraine. Since the birth of my daughter and some breakthrough science and new medicine available, I can now say I'm in remission. But how do you build a future when for years there looked like there was no future? Often the stories end at the point of the recovery, but the what's next feels like a road untravelled and conversations that are unsaid. I'd love to hear something about this on your podcast. So I think this is a really interesting question, actually, and one that is very unrecognized. In that I know that when people, for instance, have treatment for cancer and they're kind of in remission, they're told to go and live your life. But having had the structure of the illness, if you like, and the fight for the illness, how to kind of just live your life is a process of transition. So I think that raising the question is also the answer to her question, is that you can't switch from one way of being automatically and switch to another, that it's a process of change, and that she'll kind of wake up and still feel, gosh, can I live my life? And then realize that she can. And acknowledging that and the kind of discomfort of, I actually do have energy, I can do things, and naming it to herself, I think is important.
Yeah, it was such an interesting question. It's not one that I've sort of been asked, I think, or really thought deeply about before. But I'd just been on a weekend with some really great old friends from school, from when very beloved friends from when I was 16, but don't see so often because I now live not in London where they are. And we're sort of scattered. And we talked a lot. And some of it was about processing the stories that had been to help us work out who we are now. And some of the difficult stuff. And we sort of needed each other as well because they were reference points to who we had been and how we had been and how we are now and the things that had happened in between that had changed us. And I'm thinking about this person asking this question and thinking often when we're in those phases, so much of us are in survival mode. When there is big change, or at least our bandwidth for processing what is happening isn't very available because we're so busy with dealing with what is, even if you're not in full sort of fight flight. And that when something's over, when it's finally kind of at an end, the next chapter, I think, is much more about making sense of the story of who you are now, because you'll have been a different person now
Or
to the person
change,
you are
right?
before that started. But you don't know necessarily the shape of that fully. You feel, oh, like, who am I? What do I actually want anymore? It sounds like for her, having chronic fatigue syndrome and ME, it so limits your choices that she maybe has had very limited answers to the question of how would she
And no
like to
little
live.
life, and no life. I mean, a bit of the question I missed out was that she was ill for like 30 days a month. I mean, she was seriously ill. And to kind of riff on what you're saying, I think often we have the ill story, and that is the pervasive kind of thing in our life. But then to change that ill story to I'm well story, I'm okay story, is like you say, you need to integrate this new version of you because you first of all have to recognize what the cost of being ill was and name that once you're out of it. Because when you're in it, you're kind of surviving. So it's almost like a three-phase transition, isn't it? It's like looking back and kind of recognizing what the illness cost her in of life experience of how sad and angry she must have felt, and feeling that ill, being in pain like that is so awful, and some way acknowledging that while she's well might then enable her to take the next step and shift to who am I now I'm well? What has changed? What do I take from the past, like you're saying? What do I want to hold on to? What do I want to let go of? And where do I want to aim for? What do I kind of hope for?
It's a very sort of past, present, future processing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where you're trying to make sense of who you are by going back, which then helps you make sense of how you want to go forward. But also, I imagine, and obviously, when people send us these questions, we actually don't know very many details about their lives. But if I'm putting myself in their shoes, I'm imagining they've gone from a very, very narrow vista to a very, very wide one. And that might also just be very frightening, that the assumption of people around you might be like, oh, how marvelous, how fantastic, you're well, the world is now your oyster, what are you going to do? And that the expectation, both maybe within yourself and outside yourself, is that you should somehow be leaping into life and be so excited by that, when possibly you may be feeling very afraid or very overwhelmed, and really not knowing, and a sort of maybe even a resistance. Like, Mum, you often say, like, all change is hard, even good
That
change,
you
right?
want, yeah.
Yeah, even change that you want is like, we tend to resist change. So I guess it's maybe tuning into your fears a bit. Also, I think for lots of people, if you have had something taken away over a sustained period of time, or it's happened repeatedly in your life, and that can include health, then it can be very hard to trust again that you have really got it back. So it's like coming a little bit out of your hole and being like, no, probably it's all going to come falling down again, and you go back in your hole, and then you like need to support. And I would really think about who's around you, who you can have these conversations with. Obviously I have that in my mind, having just seen my friends are like, oh, some people, for some conversations, it really helps you find yourself again through other people, as well as through your own therapy or groups, or imagine there are forums out there as well that might have people who've been through that journey that you might want to seek out.
And I think the piece I would add in to trust is, again, to do with the polyvagal system, which is, do I dare to let myself have these good moments and my good health? And when we have fear, we're in a heightened state, we can't take in the good things. And so what I was thinking, as a practice for her, I would look at Deb Dana's glimmers from the polyvagal system, and what Deb Dana talks about to build resilience in the kind of movement of you between ventral vagal when you're emotionally back. So I was thinking she could access the work of Deb Dana and polyvagal theory, where, so you have what they talk about is three places. Where in ventral vagal, where we're emotionally available, we can have social engagement. Sympathetic, where we're in a heightened state, fight or flight, or dorsal, where we're kind of frozen. And if you look for glimmers, so you look at the sunset and you let your body saturate with it for like 20 to 50 seconds, like take in the glimmer, that helps build your resilience. So I was saying, like, part of her prescription for building trust and building resilience could be to look for 10 glimmers a day. So mine would be like a cup of tea. It's often nature, it's the dog, it's a hug. These are small moments of safety that you could really build into your system. And I think when you do that and you have more connection with yourself and your heart and your feelings, that also helps develop your trust in yourself, because you're not in such a brittle kind of heightened state.
Yes, I think that's really lovely. And I think a bit that although I would say 10 is quite a lot in a day, Mark.
Okay, too many then. To make it
Too
realistic.
many.
Okay,
Too
5.
many.
Do 5.
5.
Okay.
But also,
They are like 50 seconds each. But anyway, she can choose. Let her choose.
part of
We're not going to tell her
she
what
might
to
just
do.
want to.
She might want to.
But also, because the other reason that I think it's too many is that one of the things you said that I think is really important is slowness.
Oh, yeah.
That
You're better
our
at that than
cognitive
me.
system, people are just different, aren't they? But I do think that when we are frightened, we open very slowly.
Good point.
Like, our thoughts can move fast. We can go, oh, lovely sunset, bye-bye.
That's me.
Oh, lovely view, bye-bye. But if you want your body to receive something, it's slower.
Point.
So that, well, you said it in the, like, take it in, that thing of like
Saturate
10,
yourself.
20 seconds, that saturate thing, that thing of like, it's going to take time from what my eyes see to go into my brain, to be experienced by my body, for all my senses to come together and recognize that in this moment I am safe.
And
And I
I'm loving
think,
this sunset, or I'm loving this
and
hug.
then, but yeah, and you need safe first, and then comes loving sunset. And that is like a little body journey that takes a certain amount of time, or at least it does for my body.
I think it does for everybody. So I think that's right.
And I think one thing that can help if you're struggling a bit in that moment, or like someone taught this to me and I found it helpful, and it can help just as a grounding exercise, not even as a glimmer exercise, is to do this thing where you look round from all the way far as you can turn your head, keeping your body facing forward to your head as far as possible to the left, and then very slowly looking all the way around in a sort of full, obviously you can't do a full 180 with your neck, but as far as you possibly can go.
360 degrees. Yeah, you can move your body. Yeah.
But moving really slowly and letting your eyes, smell, senses just notice where you are. Because so often when we now live in psychological fear rather than physical threat, we can help our visual cortex notice that there's no danger physically around us, which then can help shift the body.
That's
But
lovely.
also, if you're in this beautiful sunset, then you get to really take in the view.
Thank you so much for asking the question. And our responses are always just take the pieces of them or the aspects of them that are useful for you. And I hope there's something in there that will be useful for you. I think a big part of it is acknowledging the shift and that you're doing that already. So you're kind of on the right road, it seems to me. For anyone else who this episode might be useful to share, do please, and do rate and subscribe. And do please keep sending us your questions. They really mean a lot to us and we really like answering them. And thank you for listening and take care.